Campus Channel. Only positivity. Stay tuned. Tourism is a significant contributor to economic growth and development in Ghana. It is also the major source of foreign exchange in the country, where it creates jobs and wealth as well as stimulate other sectors of the economy. Ghana is and has always been known for its wide range of tourist attractions and facilities. Each and every country has got its reputation to protect and preserve, as well as the country Ghana. Learning your history is very important, and Cape Coast Castle is one of the tourism sectors in the country that has a lot of history. It's also one of about 40 slave castles built on the Gold Coast of West Africa, which is now called Ghana by European traders. Let's watch, listen, and learn something about the history of Cape Coast Castle.
Where you are is known as Cape Coast Castle, which was built 1665 by the British. This place is about 354 years, and it's actually the youngest of the three castles built in Ghana. And talk of three castles, we have St. George's Castle or Elmina Castle, which was built by the Portuguese 1482, which is about 537 years. The oldest and the biggest European stone in sub-Saharan Africa. There is another one in Accra, Osu Castle or Christiansborg Castle, built by the Danes in 1661, 357 years. But Cape Coast Castle, being the youngest, was built at a time when transatlantic slave trade was at the highest level. Because of that, the dungeons here in Cape Coast Castle were built much bigger, to hold about 1,500 people at the same time. The people that were brought here were not all Ghanaians. They brought them in from several parts of Africa. But the biggest number came from West Africa. From so many West African nations, African men, women, they had to walk barefooted, either tied up or in shackles and chains, till they find themselves here. When they find themselves here in Cape Coast Castle, there is a place known as Palaver Hall, which was the market or the auction block. They will send the men, the women, gold and lots of other materials to that part. Doctors and nurses will examine the people to determine their age and strength. After that, people that are fit to be bought, yes, they will be bought by the European merchants. Those that are very weak and sickly, whoever brought them will have to take them back to where they got them from. Then after doing that, they have to hold them in storage spaces. That is the dungeons. They will wait in the dungeons for at least 2 weeks to maximum 3 months for the arrival of the slave ships. But before they sent them into the dungeons, each group of African men, women that arrived here were owned separately by lots of British European companies. So these companies will avoid confusions amongst themselves over the ownership of the strongest of the people. And by doing so, they will put metals with their initials on them into fire. It heats up, they pull it out. They smear that part of the body with oil. Then they'll be branded. Sometimes shock from that burning iron ends up killing some people. But those that survive, the men will go into the male dungeon, women in the women's dungeon. And please, people that came here, majority of them came in as prisoners of wars. If they came in as prisoners of wars, the question here is, who was bringing them? Before the Europeans arrived, indentured servitude was a thing that existed amongst local African tribes. There were lots of intertribal wars. There were, wrongdoers in the society, orphans, debtors, and lots of other people. At that time, when they get these people, they use them domestically. You will construct so you get a place to sleep. You will farm so you get food to eat. And at some point, these servants will have children. Their children never become servants to their masters because they have nothing to do with their masters. And servants could even buy their freedom at some point in their lives. They can purchase a land, they can start a small village, and they can even become chiefs of that village. So look at the system of slavery amongst Africans at that time. The Europeans had supposedly discovered the Americas. They had plantations, they needed labor, so they were here looking for labor. Yes, they were looking for labor, yet they started capturing people, but they realized that we can't always go out there and capture. We have to go to the Africans themselves and get people from them too. So they started dealing with the Africans, and the Africans started bringing them African men, women, gold, and lots of other things. Whenever Africans brought Africans, Europeans never gave them money in exchange. Because European money at that time had no value to any African around here at that time. That's why they practiced what we call the barter system of trade. So they exchanged materials. And the materials the Europeans gave to Africans, looking at it, was very cheap. Talk of guns, gunpowder, whiskey. I turn off the light. And ladies and gentlemen, starting from this very room, all the way down to the fifth or the last room on the other side, this whole space is what we call the male dungeon. The male dungeon designed for about 1,000 African men maximum, at least 700 men. So when we say 1,000 men, it doesn't mean 1,000 men will be crammed up in this room, but then they'll be spread out throughout the whole space. Looking at the 5 compartments or 5 chambers, then we will mathematically state that each room will hold about 200 people. But while they were here, there were wooden buckets placed around in the rooms. You will have to find a way to defecate in that bucket. And they were in shackles and chains. At the same time, these holes were the only source of light and air they had. Imagine this place being very dark, trying to move from where you are to the bucket placed in here to defecate, and all the time you get flies coming through the holes, spreading diarrhea, malaria, fever, and lots of other diseases, plus shackles and chains on you, slowing you down, and the population slowing you down. Will you even make it to the bucket? That is why people will sit where they are. They will just defecate, urinate, and stay at the same place. And they were fed twice every day. You will have to eat in your palm. And since they were not taking their shower, if you are eating, you don't wash your hand. And food they gave them was nothing to satisfy anybody though. Just to keep you going from time to time. And aside that, the floor of the dungeon was built a bit higher than each other, with trenches from here all the way down to that side. So from ascending order to descending order to the 5th room, which means every liquid waste from this room will run through the 2nd, through the 3rd, 4th, and 5th room. They will enter the sea from the 5th room. But imagine yourself staying in the 5th room for about 3 months. The amount of waste you are going to see leave the dungeon. That is why some people were found dead, lying in the dungeons sometimes. They will pick up the dead bodies, dispose of them into the ocean. And whenever they did that, they knew that a body can come lying on the shore the next day. That is why they tied it up with a stone or a cannonball. They drop it, it sinks. And because of the darkness in here, whenever they sent people out, they normally went partially blind. They couldn't see properly. But the sad thing of all is the Europeans, while they were here doing all these, had the first church of England built in this country above the male dungeon. They were there worshiping God. And as they did, Africans were here going through this. Together, Christianity and slave trade lasted in this very castle almost 200 years. Because of all these, sometimes people come here thinking against Christianity and everything, but that's not what we are here talking about. Well, wonderful people, this floor we are standing on is the original floor. It's the original floor because it was excavated around 1974 by the Archaeological Department from the University of Ghana, led by Professor J.B. Ankwanda. But when we go to the other rooms, the floor there It's not original because when the slave trade was almost over, the Europeans decided to stop cleaning. So they moved people outside. Instead of Africans coming to clean the place up, they would be ordered to cover everything up with sand. They will bring the people back to sleep on top of it. So it's feces, urine, and so many things caked up on the floor with sand on top of it like that. And that is what I call the DNA of the Africans that were made to stay here some years ago.
Campus Channel, only positivity. Stay tuned.